Yo, Gazmas here with another Grand Archive video. This time I'm going to discuss the basic aspects to the 3 starter elements. Before I go into each element, for these characters personify the elements perfectly. Fire is aggressive and straight to the point, wind has its combat tricks, and water as an element just feels calm. Alright, now that's out of the way, let's get into it. Starting with fire, it's the element for big attacks. They usually require a condition to get the max value, but for a single card they outperform the other elements for sheer damage. Not only do they have big physical attacks, but they also have burn spells that can clear allies or just go face. Fire also has a wide variety of discard effects. Some of them cycle, so a card out of hand to the graveyard and then drawing a card, or they discard to do damage. This cycling effects is why fire can consistently level up, as you can discard floating memory. Finally, fire is the only basic element that can destroy regalia, and something that can be pretty important in certain matchups, especially if there are some regalia that give static effects. Now that I've discussed the general feel of fire, I'll discuss how these can be seen in certain class specific cards. Fire warriors aren't all about big attacks. They can also do their own version of a burn spell using cards like Blazing Throw, at the cost of sacrificing a sword. But if they do need to attack big, there is always fire momentum. Like I said earlier, fire does have big attacks, but there is always a condition. In momentum's case, it gains power the more fire cards you have in your graveyard. Luckily, fire is pretty good at discarding, so you can stock your graveyard. Fire warrior's weakness is also that these big attacks can be played around using interceptors or redirecting attacks, as they usually can only do one big direct attack each turn. Now jumping to fire mages, they have numerous burn spells, but the standout is being fireball. Its condition is it gains power depending on your level. However, there is another fire card that can gain you levels for a turn, but that combo is not discussed on this channel due to PTSD. Any fire deck can play Creative Shock, but in Fire Mage it's got some icing on the cake, as it not only lets you cycle, but you also get to deal some direct damage. Also, speaking of Creative Shock, it's also the name of a pretty rad podcast, and the link will be in the description below. Fire Mages are strong when they get to set up their big attacks, but they are susceptible to ally based rush decks, as it does struggle to build towards its big attack and keep the board clear at the same time. Also, if it doesn't kill you, sometimes they do struggle in the following turns, especially the Rhapsody combo. Not so much in the Arcane Rye combo, but that's fire plus arcane, and at this I'm just only looking at fire by itself. Okay, so fire tamers do have cards like Shout At Your Pets, which assists with the pride restrictions of their allies for a turn, but also allows you to cycle a card, which is super important in fire decks. Why I like this card in particular is that it doesn't require you to discard a fire card, making it more flexible. So we have seen the discards that allow you to cycle, but Ember Tail allows you to discard and push 4 damage, which for squirrels is a lot of damage. Fire Tamer can push a really aggressive first couple of turns, with the likes of Ember Tail Squirrel, and you can overwhelm. However, if you don't finish the game early, you kind of traded card advantage for early aggression, and tend to fall behind as the game drags on. And finally, Fire Assassin. Now this attack can also be run in Warrior, and that is Rending Flames, which under the right circumstances has potential to do a lot of damage. Highest I got it to was 18. The condition for this is you need to banish 3 fire cards from graveyard, and then it doubles the damage the attack deals. So you can see that fire attack cards, regardless of their class, have abilities to scale, sometimes incrementally, but in this case of Rending Flames, it doubles. The final card I want to mention is Kohazi Courier, the best cycle in the game. It's essentially a better hasty messenger. Not only does it draw the card before discarding, if it's a fire card it deals damage. Not to mention it has stealth, making it stickier than most allies. The flaws to a fire assassin is that the big attack Rending Flames can be countered efficiently with cards like Deflecting Edge. So where the element shines is that it uses fire to propel itself into the advanced element. There are pure fire assassin decks with no advanced elements, and they rush the opponent. However, like Fire Tamer, if you don't win in the first few turns, you kind of run out of gas. In summation, fire uses discarding effects to fuel its graveyard for not only big attacks, but efficient leveling. It can also be used for early aggression. However, if you employ this strategy and don't win, you tend to be on a clock before you run out of fuel. Like Naruto, Wind has an abundance of combat tricks. Some are in the form of being able to attack multiple times, some redirect attacks, while others bounce allies back to hand. It also has a solid selection of anthems and pumps in the form of one-time spells, static effects, and buff counters. Wind can also blink units on the field, which used at the right time can be the difference between winning and losing. Also, it's a great way to get additional on-enter effects, which Wind has an abundance of. Wind doesn't cycle, but it's really good at maintaining card parity by using cards that replace themselves for meeting a condition. You can see attacks like Rallied Advance in Warrior, where it wakes up an ally for a second attack. Multiple attacks per turn is really strong and not seen in Fire or Water. Also, Wind Warrior has access to the best anthem in the game currently, being the Phalanx Captain, which also gets a cost reduction by having a board state, which also scales its impact. This element class combination is good at building a board, but remember, if you commit too many without means of protecting that board, you're at risk of board wipes, so Warrior needs to be calculated when amassing its army of allies. Wind mages show you how cards replace themselves, and a solid one being Fairy Whispers. The Glimpse Alone effect is pretty solid, adding the card draw is additional benefit. Another combat trick is Reclaim, bouncing the unit back to hand, so in a way replacing the card. And it also has unrestricted floating memory, so this card does see play in most ally based Wind decks, even though it's a mage specific spell. So Wind Mage in general is very good at disruption and maintaining card advantage, but Wind Mage alone cannot win games, as it doesn't have any significant damage cards and needs to be played into its advanced element, unlike Fire Mage that can win without Arcane. Wind Tamer in my opinion has the best pumps, as they are buff counters, which unlike most spell pumps, they only last a turn, these stick around. A strong one is Attune the Winds, which puts a buff counter on every ally on the field, and if you've played a melody card in the same turn, which isn't hard in Tamer, you draw a card. So this not only pumps but replaces itself. Tamer also has one of the best combat tricks in the game, which is Cry for Help, which redirects an attack from your champion to an ally. It's so good you see this in non-Tamer decks, even though they don't get the added on benefit of the +1 elf. Wind Tamer is probably the best Tamer deck at winning without an advanced element, as it has pretty big allies that you can buff, and it's not uncommon to have an 8/8 monkey. However, you need to prec that ally. Losing board control or being swept is usually game ending for Wind Tamer. Finally, Wind Assassin. It has a solid selection of bounce effects, one being Arrow Trap. At its base it returns an ally back to hand, but more than not it destroys the attacking ally. Wind Assassin, in addition to the bounce cards, also have a good selection of attacks that allow your champion to attack multiple times a turn. Something like chained poison attacks can allow your champion to attack twice or even 3 times in a single turn. If that sounds exciting, you can check out my channel for a Wind Zander build that was built to do this specifically. The downfall to this strategy is that it's a bit of a glass cannon. Once you pop off, it's hard to rebuild to do the combo again. Also, as Wind Assassin doesn't have too many good board sweeps, outside of bouncing back to hand, so you need to actively work to maintain board control, which can be hard into Tamers and ally based warrior decks. Wrapping Wind up, you can see it allows you to gain incremental advantage at every attacking exchange. This is done both when attacking with multiple attacks and pumps, but also defending, by again using pumps but also bouncing units back to hand. However, most ally based Wind decks need to be conscious of not overextending, as once a board is swept it does take time to rebuild. Water may not be able to push a lot of damage, but it does heal, something the other two elements can't. Water has access to heal spells, but also attacks that recover health, and also allies that on attack recover health, meaning it's good at grinding games out. It's also the only element that mills itself, usually filling its graveyard with floating memory, which it uses to level up and gain advantage using other card effects. Not only does it grind by regaining life, it also has cards that intentionally stall your opponent. This is done by temporarily removing resources from your opponent, making other cards cost more, or having allies enter the field rested. Finally, due to the mill, water enables you end up with a lot of floating memory in the graveyard, more than you need to level, so water helps with this as it has cards that allow you to trade the dead card for a new one. Water Warrior has access to the most recover cards, like Restorative Slash and Battle Priest. Noting Battle Priest at 4 health is pretty hard to clear, so you usually gain a couple of health back from this unit. It also fits the theme that Warrior at each level has more health than other classes that will get most of the recover cards. But Water Mage is better at stalling the game. It uses cards like Sudden Snow. Not only does this stall the game, but it also has added benefits of using a card in your graveyard to replenish your hand. This is a unique feature to Water. Also, Water Mage has quite a few cards that rest units. In addition to Sudden Snow, you can see it also has cards like Frozen Nova. The card does chip damage and it also rests the board, which is like a mini board sweep, something that Water also struggles with. Water Tamer also has its own cards that stall, like Piper's Lullaby. But not only does it tap an ally, it also has an additional benefit, in this instance gaining a level for a turn, which is key to Tamer strategies. A bit different to other healing cards where they heal your champion, Tamer, as expected, has cards that heal your allies, like Give Bath, which also has the additional benefit of being floating memory. And lastly, Water Assassin, which incorporates mill in its cards, like Set the Traps, which pairs lovely with Zander's ability of glimpsing on level 1. Outside of floating memory, Water Assassin also uses milling to gain card advantage, by bringing out an ally from the graveyard, that being Mistbound Cutthroat, which enters the field from the graveyard whenever an ally is milled. This effect obviously gets stronger the more of them that are in your graveyard. So wrapping up, I didn't do a class specific weakness for water because they all kind of share the same one, and that is a win condition. Water, you can see, is good at extending games, however they don't have the cards to finish them. Therefore water is a support element, meaning that water needs to be paired with one of the advanced elements to generate enough value to win games consistently. With that being said, if they print more mill cards, maybe, just maybe, you'll be able to mill your opponents, which I'm actually all in for. So that's all for this video. If you'd like to see us talk about the advanced elements, or perhaps want to see a specific element and class deck, let me know in the comments and I'll see what I can whip up. As always, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like and a sub. Also, you can find us in the Discord. All the links will be below. Cheers.